The main cause of most people's suffering is the way they are speaking to themselves. The reason that's the reason is because you cannot speak to other people or regard the world in any way that you do not regard yourself. So you can't regard the world with love, with kindness, with acceptance, with appreciation, with non-judgment, compassion, forthrightness, if you do not relate to yourself in that way. You might think that you do, but in fact, you don't if you don't feel right, so to speak, internally or aligned. The reason that's the case is because you're putting up a front. We put up fronts, right? We have a self image. We want to be polite. We want to be seen or think that we are a certain way. So we say things that are not necessarily true or authentic because they sound good. They're cliches fundamentally, or we feel like it's going to attain some kind of result we want to achieve, but they're shallow, they're empty, they have no weight. So I want to read this quote here by Marcus Aurelius from Meditations. I don't normally do this, but I just picked up this book and it's actually phenomenal. And I want to read this quote and I want to expand it on the point that I just made. Train yourself to think only those thoughts, such that in answer to the sudden question, "What is in your mind now?" you could say with immediate frankness whatever it is, this or that, and so your answer can give direct evidence that all your thoughts are straightforward and kindly, the thoughts of a social being who has no regard for the fancies of pleasure or wider indulgence, for rivalry, malice, suspicion, or anything else that one would blush to admit was in one's mind. A man such as this, if he postpones no longer his ready place among the best, is in some way a priest and minister of the gods. So here he's talking about purity of thought. That's essentially what he's talking about. Unfortunately, for everybody, Marcus was not entirely correct. The reason he was not entirely correct is because technically that's not possible. That is actually impossible. So it's nice to write things and words are nice, but we have to understand the reality of things. The reality of things is that we live in a state where we are always going to have thoughts that we don't necessarily want to have, or they're not necessarily welcome, or we don't feel like they align with our principles, our values, our character, or the character that we want to build, the values that we do want to hold. And so we have to be able to relate to ourselves when those thoughts emerge. So the issue that most people have is that when the thoughts appear, they relate to those thoughts in the way that they relate to themselves, which is typically bring them further down, deeper into chaos, into darkness, into confusion, into sadness, into anxiety, into loneliness, despair, and these types of things. And so the only way to get out of this is to learn to create dialogue with yourself in moments when even you're not thinking. The reason that is important is because you want to definitely feel into your experience when you're having a great time, when you're playful, when you're happy, when you're laughing, when you're either by yourself with other people, it doesn't matter. But when you're in that state, you really want to take note of it. You want to be aware of it, pause, stop, smell the roses, as they say, enjoy it, and then notice what's happening right now in your experience. What is making this experience so fantastic, so beautiful, so amazing? So that way you create that awareness in your mind. And as your mind generates, because you're the one leading the dance here, right? So as your mind is generating different thoughts and different reasons as to why you're having such a great time, because you're creating that awareness, you're actually more able to bring that experience into the future. The reason you can do that is because, number one, you're training your mind to want to go back there. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if you don't go back there and you just think about that experience, you're more likely to be able to replicate it because you're focusing on it. And so you're basically giving your mind a direction. So you're giving your mind opportunities to look in a specific location, and that location, so to speak, that metaphysical location has predictable outcomes or consequences or processes or experiences that are going to be in line with how you're using your mind. So in that particular example that I gave with Marcus Aurelius, is if you don't have malice and rivalry and impulsive pleasures in your mind, sorry, if you have those in your mind, then of course you're going to look for experiences that is going to be reflective of the thoughts that you're having. And then the inverse is also true. When you have opposite thoughts, you're going to look for experiences that are going to be able to fulfill those. So keep one thing in mind here. That's the first thing, right? That's the first thing that I wanted to mention. The second thing that I want to mention is the fact that you're going to have moments where you're not necessarily thinking anything, right? So you're going to be sitting there, you're going to be feeling something, and it's not necessarily a positive feeling. Oh, like, why am I feeling this way? Am I feeling a bit uneasy? I'm feeling a bit anxious, a bit frustrated, a bit like I'm moving too slow. Like I shouldn't be here. I should be doing something else. I should be spending my time better. That I should be further along, or you have a future that you continue to think about, but because you're not there yet, you're feeling unsatisfied. You got to give yourself a little bit of grace, a little bit of credit. And the reason why is because you cannot generate any positive emotion if you start taking a dump on yourself when you're feeling all of these things. So, when you're feeling all of these things, there's only two solutions, actual solutions to everything that I just described, all those experiences. The first one is that if you're able to do something to actually improve that particular situation, whether it's okay, you know what, well, I'm a bit hungry now that I'm thinking this, why don't I eat a healthy meal? Or I haven't hit the gym today, why don't I go to the gym? Or I haven't spoken to somebody all today, maybe I should speak to somebody that I care about and tell them that I love them, or just have a conversation with them, a little bit of a back and forth. It could be like 2 minutes, right? Or send somebody a text, or maybe I should give myself to somebody else. Maybe I should pay somebody a compliment, or feed somebody who needs to be fed, or a homeless person. Maybe I can do some work, specific work around this area. Maybe I have been lacking, struggling, um, and I should do, or not, I should do maybe it would be warranted if I did something that would like move the ball forward a little bit so I can feel a little bit of positive emotion. Give myself, make sure that I'm doing things to expand myself, to see a little bit of progress in some domain, right? Some domain. That's the first thing. The second thing is also to the second thing has two components. So the first thing is the action. So it's like, what are you doing? The second thing is the framing, right? So how are you framing that situation? But also, how are you relating to yourself? The relating is not necessarily the framing, because you're not trying to reframe an experience to make it seem like it's something that it's not. That's not what you're trying to do here, right? What you're trying to do is, number one, understand that if you had somebody very close to you, your child, your brother, your sister, your friend, who was in pain for whatever reason, and you knew that what you said would have an impact, which it does, of course, because otherwise, why would you be there talking to them? That's why we talk to people, right? To exchange ideas, to communicate, to feel good, and you have to ask yourself, what would I tell this person who is feeling this way? How would I relate to them? How would I relate to how they're feeling and to what they're thinking? And that'll help you get the ball rolling as far as creating a dialogue with yourself, to just parent yourself a little bit, and help yourself. That's basically what you're trying to do. The second thing is to, again, the reframing is important because you want to be able to see things from a different perspective. It's kind of like you're scaling back, you're zooming out rather, and you're seeing contextually, based off where you are, what other things around you. Let me say that again. So when you're very focused on a certain part of the graph, let's say, for example, it's like there's a dip there, right? If you zoom out, you'll notice that there's actually movement in the graph, and typically it's trending upwards, right? And that's usually how life is in general, is that basically we're on a journey. We're the hero of our own story. So of course we're going to have moments where we're not feeling fantastic. But remember that if you don't want to stay there, or sabotage yourself, or beat yourself up, or make the situation worse, just unnecessarily contribute to the negativity or darkness of the situation, you have to be able to coach yourself and give yourself a little bit of grace, so that way you can actually serve in truth and serve in compassion for yourself and for other people. So remember, First thing is it's not possible to have pure thoughts forever. So, first thing, just understand it's completely normal to have judgmental thoughts, to have various thoughts of any kind. So, create awareness, right, around what kind of thoughts you're having, around the experiences that you're having that are good, to find out what's going on and how could you replicate those experiences, and then recall those a bit later. And then also, if things are not going so well, you're communicating with yourself in a way that lifts you up, that's encouraging, that's motivating. That's really the fundamental essence, right? Those are the main components, is that whatever you say has to make you feel better, has to motivate you, encourage you, make you feel like you're supported, right? That's the point of your communication to yourself. So if you think that you're supposed to say something to yourself that doesn't have that consequence, because you say something, you're like, well, what about this and what about that, and you feel worse, don't think that, oh, I'm saying the right things. Well, you just have to tune into yourself and how you're feeling and how you're thinking. If it's worse, then you have to change your approach. So you're constantly changing your approach until you figure out what works. And then once you figure out what works, you do more of that. So hope this video was helpful. It was a little bit, I would say not very focused on one particular area, but I think it's good to know. I think it's good to know in general. So if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel, sign up for the school community. It's free. You can click on the link, join the community. There's already a good 20 people in there. And we have bi-weekly group calls, Zoom calls, Tuesdays and Fridays at 12 o'clock Eastern. Zoom link is in the group, so you can join. We have conversations. We could do one-on-ones. And it's beautiful because all the issues that I talk about here, we actually take a deep dive and address those. And so if you want any like personal attention as far as like healing, progress, insights, then just join up. It's free, and I'll see you in there. So until next time, I'll see you soon.